Hey everyone, it's Haley, and I am so excited for this week's episode of Haley on the Go. We have an amazing guest with us, someone who is really just like all of us, but a little bit more successful, Mark Cuban.
What's up, Haley? Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for joining us and taking the time out of your day. I really appreciate it. I have so much I want to talk to you about, so I'm going to dive right in.
Cool.
And I want to start with something that's been in the headlines a lot lately and something you know a lot about. You are so outspoken about your work taking on the pharmaceutical industry and trying to help our healthcare system get better. Just this
Yep.
past week, the president announced a new tariff policy, 100% tariffs on pharmaceuticals that are branded and patented. And I know historically that medicine has been left out of the tariffs because of concerns over costs and shortages.
Right.
So I'd love to hear from you your thoughts on the tariff policy and sort of how you think it's going to impact the work you're doing and people being able to access affordable medicine.
Sure. So there's basically two types of medicine. One is the branded stuff that they talked about, which are under patent, and then there's generic medicines. Generic medicines make up 92% of the prescriptions that are filled in the country. And so the good news is the tariffs won't impact them at all. So that's good. Now on the branded stuff, it's kind of funky right now because, you know, he hasn't really gotten into a lot of details about when it'll apply and when it won't apply. And he just had a meeting with Pfizer, and he said it wouldn't apply if Pfizer did A, B, and C, potentially. And so we're waiting to see how that plays out. Honestly, you know, if history's any indicator, I don't think you'll end up having tariffs on the branded medications because I don't think anybody wants to deal with the price of their Eliquis, doubling. But
Yeah.
no matter what, at costplusdrugs.com, where what we started to keep down the price, we're gonna give you the cheapest possible price.
I love that. And it's very typical to not have a lot of details on his policy.
I'm not gonna say a word.
Well, I wanted to kind of use this to talk about, I think that being able to access care for you and your loved ones, medicine is sort of at the very center of what the American dream is or should
Oh yeah.
be. And I've heard you talk a lot about the American spirit or that idea and how it's played a role in your entrepreneurial journey. And sort of famously have said that paying taxes is one of the most patriotic things you can do. And I want to talk
Yep.
about that. Before we do, I want to ask you about how much money do you pay in taxes?
A lot. Like percentage wise, I think I actually looked like over the years, I haven't paid under 19%
Wow.
ever. And I think last year it was 28%, give or take.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not like, people think just because you're wealthy, you're just not paying any taxes and getting away with everything. That's not me, right? It's not like I'm not trying to minimize my taxes. I don't want to give more to the government than I have to, but I don't try to game it, right? If I have to pay it, I got to pay it. That's just the way it goes. And it's a good problem to have. I'd rather be in a position where I'm paying a lot of money in taxes because that's what pays for our military. That's what pays for our police. That's what pays, to help fund hospitals. All those things are important. And two, it means I made a lot of money. And so
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing either.
I think I've seen that. There's been years where you've paid like 250 million plus dollars in taxes,
Yeah,
which is
285 million last 2 years ago.
crazy amount of money, especially when you think about that there are billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk who have gotten away with paying $0 in federal income tax in the past, which is
Yeah, I don't know what
crazy.
they actually pay. They're not telling me. And there's, people
Yeah.
think like there's a billionaires club. Like, hey, what are you paying in taxes? Even though that they did have Jeff Bezos and me on a Simpsons episode a couple years ago, I guess a long time now. But no, there's no like billionaire handshake. There's no club. It's not like we know what each other's. I have no idea what he pays in taxes. And honestly, I don't care. I just do what I think is the right thing.
No, I think that's great. And I think it is so patriotic. And so I wanted to ask you is I feel like the Make America Great Again movement has done an amazing job sort of rebranding the values of patriotism. When I think paying taxes and giving back to your country when they've given you something is really core to patriotism.
Yeah, I
How
agree.
do you explain to people why it's so important if you're not a billionaire, but just to do your share?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're blessed to live in this country. We might argue and we might not like each other right now in a lot of cases, but at the same time, we're Americans.
Yeah.
And, once we get offline and we just talk to people or talk like we're talking, I have no idea what party you belong to. I don't care.
Yeah.
All I know is that I'm lucky to live in this country. And even though it's not perfect and there's additional challenges right now, it's still given me the opportunity to be where I am. It's giving my kids, it's giving your kids. And I still really, really believe the American dream is alive and well. That's why I did Shark Tank all those years, because I
Yeah.
wanted people to get excited about starting a business, to know that there's an opportunity. And, you know, when you're in the middle of it, it rarely seems perfect. But when you compare it to other countries, like there's no English dream, right? There's no
Yeah.
Canadian dream. There's no Indian dream. There's an American dream, and they come here to start
Yeah.
businesses. And that's what makes us so different than every other country in the world. It's part of our nature to want to innovate. It's part of our nature to want to create. And we've gone through difficult times in our history before, but the overriding sentiment and something that's been consistent is if you're an entrepreneur and you go out there and come up with a great idea, anything is possible. And not just in terms of how much money you can make, but the impact you can have on the country and the world. No matter what, everything that's non-organic that's ever been invented, your microphone, this
Yeah.
chair you're sitting on, that was somebody's idea. And there was an entrepreneur that came up with that and said, I'm going to create this. And someday Haley on the Go is going to be sitting on this chair, using this mic, doing living up to what I dreamed of. That doesn't happen elsewhere. Like I was talking to a bunch of kids yesterday from Spain, and they had
Right.
flown in to an event that I was doing. And I said, well, why don't you do more of this in Spain? And they're like, that's just not how people think. They don't think, let's start a business. They don't think, let's invest in these kids to help them grow their business and see what the impact will be. That's exactly what we think. Every single person, almost every single person we know has had that idea, right? You
Yep.
get that idea in your stomach and you're like, this is a great idea. I can't wait. You tell your friends and you're like, what do you think? They're like, oh, that's a good idea. You get on Google or now Chat GPT or Gemini, and you're like, is anybody else doing this? And it's like, no, nobody else is doing it. You're like, I'm going to create this new company. And then most people stop. But
I love that.
in this country, you can keep on going forward. And you don't have to start with a lot of money. Every business that I started, particularly when I was younger, I was broke, and I started with nothing. And so that's what makes us great. And that's why, I think we should help entrepreneurs more. We should talk about entrepreneurship more. And I can go on for days talking about this stuff. So I'll stop here and
No,
wait to
this
hear
is
your question.
No, this is so great. And I just was in New York for the United Nations General Assembly and heard someone not from America say, the ability to dream is such a privilege and our ability here to have those dreams. And I think it's something that connects all of us and we really are so much more alike
Oh,
with
for
each other.
sure.
Yeah.
You're right, because like we can be curious here.
Hmm.
There's no limit to our curiosity. And now there's so many more tools to build on our curiosities. You can open up ChatGPT and Gemini or
Yeah.
Perplexity or whatever, right? And just go at it and just ask it questions. You can be 6 years old. You can be 12 years old. Your parents could be wealthy. They could be broke, right? You could be in a horrible set of circumstances. ChatGPT don't care. It's going to answer your questions. When I was a kid, you had to go to the library if you were curious and you had to find a book, right? Now you don't have to have access to a library. You don't have to have access to books. You don't have to have access to encyclopedias like we had back in the day. You just go into ChatGPT or whatever and start asking it questions. You can learn pretty much anything that a teacher can teach you. And there's nothing. It democratizes education so dramatically. That creates unique opportunities for everyone. It's really a great time to be an entrepreneur.
You took the words out of my mouth. I love the phrase that it democratizes voice. And I often say also it's like a modern day town square where you can come across so many different people's ideas and reach so many people that you would never be exposed to before. So the internet and tools like ChatGPT have really modernized education and made it more affordable and accessible, but it's also come with a lot of problems
Yeah.
and sleuth of bad actors and also messaging wars. And so I wanted to ask you about that because, you know, you are a notoriously good business owner. You owned an NBA team. You pay your taxes. You believe in treating your employees well. You are a family man. In my mind, that is everything that is like the stereotypical good male role model. But yet,
Appreciate that.
no, for sure. But yet, I see so many young people that I talk to or that I interact with on the internet really looking up to men in leadership that I think are pretty toxic and maybe even sort of like losers, for lack of a better term,
No, I hear
because
you.
yeah, we've lost a messaging war on who has a microphone. Like part of democratizing voices, anyone can have a microphone. So, how do you think about that? And how do you think we sort of come
It's a
back
great
from
topic.
appreciating people with who do have an educational background or should have a mic or reflect those values that are really important?
Well, first, I'm far from perfect, but I agree with you that, you know, there's issues right now.
Yeah.
And everything is driven by social media, and social media is driven by algorithms. And those algorithms don't care about you. They care
Yeah.
about profits, right? They care about engagement. And that's what they're focused on doing. This isn't even like 6 years ago when your social media use on Instagram and TikTok was who do you follow? And all you saw was the posts from the people you follow. Now the algorithm takes over and it knows everything that you're doing. It knows, you know, even if a video showed up to you on TikTok that you really didn't like, it knows exactly how long that you just loitered on it, right? That's
Mhm.
insane. And there, as a result, more often than not, the more toxic something is, the more engagement it gets because social media is the only place where you can get mad and get away with it.
Yeah.
Like you're not like if you and I were face to face, Haley, we're not going to get mad at each other, right?
No,
Even if we disagree on something, we're going to find a common ground, you know, or at least we're going to have a reasonable conversation. On
100%.
social media, everybody gets, you know, drunk courage. Everybody gets Twitter courage, right? And will say everything and anything. And that builds the toxicity. And on top of that, because the algorithms know, they feed you voices, like you said, toxic masculinity. I can't talk today. Toxic
No.
masculinity that they just feed you because they know that that anger brings out more engagement, particularly from
Yeah.
young men. And so you don't see role models succeeding online. I can post the best business advice and it's going nowhere. I can go heated at somebody and it's going up, right? And I'm going to get more
Right. The rage
engagement.
bait.
Yeah, the rage bait's insane. And so, a couple things. One, I don't think we should let kids on any social media that's algorithmically driven.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. If you're whether it's 16 or 18, no. Now, if that social media platform wants to publish their algorithm so we know exactly what's happening,
Hmm.
okay, maybe. If that social media platform deals with kids like that are 13, right, it better be moderated because you don't want kids having access to porn and nasty stuff, right? And
Yeah.
but yet that's what you find. A 13-year-old can go on X and see some of the nastiest stuff ever,
It's
you
true.
know, and not just X, other platforms as well. And so, you know, we need to start thinking about controlling that. And one way is, you know, a lot of schools are limiting kids' access to phones while they're in school. That's a great start, right? But I think, you know, I'm not one to censor, but this isn't about censorship. This is about the algorithms and having whether letting them take advantage of kids that don't understand what's happening and don't understand how they're being taken advantage of. Hell, even adults don't understand how the
No.
algorithms work and how they're taken advantage of. You can't expect kids 13, 16, 18 to.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that is contributing to sort of the death of appreciation for education or experience is the being when we started being able to purchase a blue check mark, where
Yeah.
we can purchase the ability to be taken as a subject matter expert. People are presented, especially people like media literacy and media competency is so difficult when you're presented with someone telling you facts on medicine or vaccines or contraception or whatever.
Don't even
They
get
have
me
a blue check
started,
mark.
right?
Yeah, I want to get you
You,
started.
no, you're so right. You're so right because everybody's an expert. And
Yeah.
if you go viral, You're going to make money. And if
Yeah.
you're making money, you're going to want to do more of what made you money.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with whether you're right or wrong. I mean, you're seeing the diminishing acceptance of science, and
Yeah.
that's horrific, and it's being picked up in government and higher levels. And you saw what happened with measles,
Hmm.
X number, the number of measles cases and deaths than we've had in decades. And who knows what's going to happen, as we get to flu season. I mean, it's going to be worse. And so it's scary. It's
Yeah.
really, really scary. And, particularly being a parent that's just having a newborn, trying to deal with all that pressure of vaccinations and what to get, I think it's really going to be tough. And, the most underappreciated segment are doctors and
Yeah.
nurses, right? They're underpaid, they're overworked, they're saddled with debt. We don't seem to care about that and how we approach healthcare. And we wonder why, parents aren't necessarily getting the best information. Where in the past, you used to be able to go to your doctor, go sit there, or even the nurse that's there, or even the nurse in school, and spend as much time as you needed to just to get good, in depth information. Now the
Yeah.
doctors barely have enough time to take your temperature.
No, and it's an information warfare. When it comes to doctors, I always think about how everyone criticizes doctors on the internet or maybe medicine, but if someone they know or love is being sick, they are going to want that person to get the best care that they possibly can. So we have to continue to value it. I do think part of us, I'm on the left side of things, and I constantly am talking to people about what I think are just kind of more overall values of American citizens that have been sort of pushed aside because of politics, but that we have to go into spaces that we're not always in order to have these conversations, break through
100%.
the noise.
Yes.
And
You can't just talk to people who agree with you.
100%. And I do think that's something that traditional Democratic leadership has failed at when it comes to the PR campaign around, especially masculinity and the manosphere. But I know it's something that you've actually leaned into. I've seen that you've talked to
Oh, yeah.
people like Theo Vaughn and Tucker
Oh, yeah.
Carlson.
I love Theo.
Yeah. So I wanted to hear why you thought it was important to do that and sort of debunk that it's like not that scary to go into these spaces
No, it's not
potentially.
scary at all. Theo's a great guy. He's crazy, right? And he says some shit that's insane, but that's okay, right? I want to be able to talk to him. I want him to
Yeah.
understand, where I'm coming from, and I want to understand where he's coming from. Whether it's Theo, the Nelk boys, and Andrew Schultz is the best example, right? Him and Joe Rogan. I haven't been on Rogan's show, but they've started to lean left the more they've seen from this administration and come around because they're smart guys. And I
Yeah.
think where the Democrats screwed up was they just presumed that they were just, had tunnel vision on just being supporters of Donald Trump. And that just
Yeah.
wasn't the case. It was just that Trump did a better job of connecting to them
Yeah.
than the Democrats and Kamala did. And that's unfortunate. And, going back to your underlying point, Democrats can't sell. You've heard the old saying, when you try to sell steak, you sell the sizzle, not the steak. The
It's good.
Republicans will tell you the sizzle. They'll tell you about how it smells. They'll tell you about how it tastes. The Democrats want to tell you what farm it came from, what kind of grain that, the cow was fed, what the details are on the cut of the steak, nothing that makes it appetizing. And so, it's like right now with the shutdown,
Hmm.
and they're talking about healthcare.
Yeah.
Well, healthcare is obviously an important topic, but they're missing the boat because insurance, even through the ACA, is not a proxy for healthcare.
Yeah.
And they keep on saying healthcare, healthcare, healthcare. It's insurance, insurance, insurance. They're literally trying to get more money to send to the insurance companies as part of the premium extensions, subsidies extensions, which you need to do in the short term, but they're not talking about the long term at all. They're not saying, insurance companies, health insurance companies, nobody likes their health insurance company, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the most hated industries of all industries. And here are the Democrats talking about, okay, we need to shut down the government so that we can send tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars to health insurance companies so that patients can fight to get it back, instead of saying deductibles are too damn high. We
Yeah.
don't need to send this money to insurance companies. We need to make it available to people who can't afford their deductibles. For a family of four that's on the ACA Silver plan, that makes 125 grand, the out of pocket maximum is $19,200 and going up.
Yeah.
And then at the lower levels, it's harder for people because most people don't have $400 in the bank.
And
And so the Democrats are trying to do the right thing. They just don't know how to sell it, and they don't get in the details. They just listen to their consultants and polls as opposed to trying to talk to people, like you said, get in front of them and listen and find out what really matters. And because if you can't pay your deductible, it doesn't matter if you have insurance or not.
I always say healthcare, housing, or roof over your head. Those are the things that everybody wants to know how you're going to help them do.
Yes.
Buy your food and make it that simple. But to your point, the algorithms are so different. We're not even seeing the same content. So if we're not talking
Nope.
to the rooms and the algorithms that are getting to people on the other side,
100%.
they're never hearing our side of the argument.
100%. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, each of us has our own unique algorithm.
100%.
Haley
Yeah.
doesn't get the same feed I get, and I don't get the same feed. I mean, it's probably really, really, really close, but yeah, we're not going to get the same feed. And in order to respond to that, the Republicans understand you have to flood the zone.
Yeah.
So when Donald Trump says they're eating cats and dogs, he doesn't care if they're really eating cats and dogs.
Yeah.
Like, he just wants it to flood the zone, and because he knows the way the algorithms are designed, that's going to make it to everybody.
And
When
they're focused
Kamala
on a
first
big
got
tent.
in, was that?
Oh, sorry. I was saying they're focused on a big tent. So
Yeah.
they want to reach as many
Something,
people as possible.
but you got to understand that the algorithms still, like we said earlier, are driven by engagement, which is driven by rage bait. And so you either have got to say something that is really going to bring out that rage, or is something that is big tent, that is something that everybody can get behind. Like when Kamala got into the race and it was Brat Summer and, the whole coconuts thing, she was everywhere.
She
And
was.
everybody thought she was going to win. And then they immediately stopped with the social media. Immediately. I'm like, when I would talk to her team, I'm like, have her do an Instagram live. Have her do every podcast she can do. Have her do a TikTok live. Like, you can see the questions before you answer them. Have them do a Reddit AMA. They wouldn't do it. They
Yeah.
wouldn't do it. And it's still to this day. When was the last time, you saw a major Democratic politician do an Instagram live? Or,
Yeah.
Pete Buttigieg does a good job going on all the different podcasts, but they just don't have that Big Ten attitude.
And the live is where you get that authenticity. It's a little bit less scripted than the podcast, or not that podcasts are scripted, but it's a little bit less controlled, and people really feel like they get to know somebody. But I do
Yes.
think there's this what seems like an inherent fear to do things that are risky and different and new and not
Which
in
is so
control.
wrong. They're smart candidates usually, right? But I think it's an age thing too, because some of
Yeah.
them are older and don't really understand it. And if someone's like, "Yo, boy, you got, you grew up, you got some riz going on," and da 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 da, or you're cooked. They're going to freak out, and I think that's what gets them.
They got to hire young people. Gavin Newsom's doing a
Yes,
great job with his team. Yeah. Hire young
yes,
people who are
yes,
digitally native, who are ready to go. Um,
100%.
yeah. I do want to ask you. So, I know when you stepped away from the Mavs and from Shark Tank, you talked about wanting to spend more time with your kids and your wife, which I think is really admirable.
Yep.
And when people ask you, I think really frequently lately, if you're going to run for president, you say that you don't want to expose them to the kind of abuse that they would inevitably, like 100% be exposed to, which I totally get. A lot of my audience is young women who are interested in politics, but constantly messaging me that they're afraid to lean in because of how volatile the space is.
Yeah,
So a few
yeah,
questions on this, but I want to start with,
sure.
are you worried because of how, and technology plays a huge role in this factor, but how volatile and like aggressive and lack of boundaries politics has become, it's going to limit our talent
Oh,
pipeline of who
sure,
considers running for offices.
sure. No, you're 100. Yeah, with 100% certainty.
Yeah.
Nobody who wants to go through that shit, right?
Yeah.
And particularly if you've got a young family. But what I would say is that's on a national scale, in a regional scale, more than a local scale. So for your audience, for the moms, yeah, the PTA meetings and the school board meetings can get a little bit abusive, and the city council meetings, but they're pretty much localized and they're still relatively safe. So please, you have the perfect audience that we need them to go in and start talking. Do you know who James Tallarico is?
Of course, in Texas,
Okay.
big fan. Yeah.
Texas, yeah, love him. Love him.
Yeah.
We need more James, right? James is willing to go and talk to anybody. He can connect to anybody. And it's real down to earth people that weren't growing up to be politicians that we need more of. And so, as a parent, male or female, whatever, find your place and
Yeah.
just show up and just see how it goes. You don't have to immediately dive in and say, I'm running for office, but just showing up so you can listen and learn and being curious about how the process works. Who knows what comes next? You might find out that you have the ability that you didn't realize you had to come in and have an impact.
I have been talking to a lot of young women about a local level and talked to a state legislator. I grew up in South Florida from the Florida area who on average receives like 90 messages of harassment on social media an hour and has received
An hour?
like, yeah, and has received death threats to the point of needing to get the FBI involved, but there's no
Yeah.
budget for office protection. She's a ring
Yeah, that's
bell
just
camera.
wrong. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I also spoke to another young woman who ran for office recently, and when you sign the papers to run, like the petition, you have to kind of self-dox yourself because you have to put your address on the form, which feels very archaic to be like,
Yep.
this is where I live, and you're
Especially
going to
now, right?
publicly put that out there. Dox yourself is how do we, when someone like you who has so many resources to potentially protect yourself is like, I'm out, not this. This is way too
Yeah. How can
much.
somebody who doesn't have those resources even think
How do
about it?
we build a pipeline of next generation leadership?
That's a great question. I think, whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a
Yeah.
Republican, going to their events, before you get involved and just finding out what resources are available to you to see if you can protect yourself. And two, I think, you just bring up a great point. Let's change that law. Self-doxing is just ridiculously stupid in this day and age, right?
Yeah.
And, whether you start with Florida, whether you start with, the representatives that you say, let's just offer that legislation and see what happens. Because I think Republicans have the same fear, independents have the same fear.
Yeah.
And so it would make perfect sense, call it the Haley rule, that you can't, you don't have to self-dox. Somebody just has to confirm your address. Somebody from the party or somebody from the state confirms your address, and then that's it. It doesn't go on any forums. So, you're going to be safer.
I love that. I think maybe I'll get to it and you'll hear about the Haley
You
law.
should. You should. No, literally, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something that's very important. And it's such a fundamental first step to protecting people. Because if you can't take the first step, and I never thought of that, so I'm mad at myself for not thinking about that. So it's a great idea, that
We
you
can
come up
partner.
with. We can partner. But go for it. Go for it because it's
Awesome.
really, really impactful and really important. And you've got the audience that can help you do it. If you have to, get signatures, if you need somebody to propose the legislation, you've got people there that'll help you. It's brilliant.
Okay. I will do it. And I'm going to follow up with you about it. I think
Please do. Yeah.
I've got my marching orders. I wanted to wrap up by asking you some fun questions.
Sure.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you recently, I've heard you say, whoever controls the algorithms controls your thoughts. So would you ever buy the Democrats an algorithm?
Yeah, I wish you could buy the Democrats an algorithm, right?
Yeah.
But I tried to teach them how to work within the algorithms, some of the things we've talked about. But yeah, I wish it was that easy because I would be like, done, let's go.
Are you concerned about the TikTok purchase?
Yeah, I'm not, because I think it's going to be a mess, continue to be the same kind of mess. I don't think anything's really going to change.
That's
Because again,
reassuring
they're going to
hear.
follow the money.
Yeah. Okay. Reassuring to hear. Who is your favorite WNBA player?
Caitlin, probably. No, actually, I take that back. Paige Buchert is my first. Enrique, Dallas Wings players.
Yeah.
So Paige and Enrique are probably my two favorite. Caitlin was just the easy one, but I'll go with Paige and Enrique.
Okay. I love that. Do you have a go-to karaoke song?
Yeah. So every year at the wrap party for Shark
Okay.
Tank, we'd go do
Okay.
karaoke.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's
so
so
my,
fun.
oh yeah, me and Damon John would, you know, so our song is Ebony and Ivory, and we're
That's
terrible, just terrible. So, and if Damon's not there for whatever reason, then it's why can't we be friends?
okay, that's great. Are there videos, evidence of this?
Yes, there is, and you will never see it.
Okay, maybe enough people will comment and ask for it because that's incredible. All right,
That's
my
pretty funny.
last
There may
question
be
is,
one online. There may be an Ebony and Ivory one online, but I hope not,
okay, I'm gonna look for it. I'll stitch it in if I can find it.
if you can find it.
But my last question was, if you were to run for president and win, could I be your press secretary?
Definitely. Done.
It's on camera.
Promise.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, to join this episode of Haley on the Go. I'm so grateful for the way you use your voice, your platform, and everything that you do.
I appreciate that. This was really fun. You did a great job. I really, really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thank you.